My father chose his new family over me for 20 years. Then, his new family left him. I want to tell you about a phone call I received on a Thursday evening in November. I was in my kitchen in Portland, Oregon, making dinner. My daughter Lily was at the table doing homework. My husband Marcus was due home in 20 minutes. It was an ordinary Thursday. The best kind. The kind you don't notice while it's happening because nothing is wrong. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. My father's name. I stood there for a moment, holding the phone, watching his name light up the screen. My father and I had not spoken in 14 months. Before that, we had spoken perhaps 3 times in the previous 2 years. Before that, well, before that is the whole story. I let it ring 4 times. Then I answered. Emma. His voice was older than I remembered. Quieter. I didn't know if you'd pick up. I almost didn't, I said. A pause. Sandra left. She took the kids. Sandra, his second wife, the woman he had chosen over my mother, over me, over 20 years of our family, when I was 11 years old and had no say in any of it. She had left. The family he had built in place of ours, gone. I stood in my kitchen on an ordinary Thursday, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not the vindication I had told myself I wanted for 20 years. Just a very deep, very quiet tiredness. My name is Emma. I'm 38 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of what it costs to be someone's second choice, and what it means to finally decide you're done paying that price. Subscribe and stay with me. Because what I said to my father on that phone call, that took me 20 years to be ready to say. Let me tell you about my father before Sandra. His name is David. He is 61 years old now, a retired civil engineer who spent 30 years designing bridges and overpasses in the Pacific Northwest. He is tall and methodical and has a laugh that comes rarely and means everything when it does. He coached my soccer team when I was 8. He taught me to drive a stick shift in an empty parking lot on a Sunday morning. He read to me every night until I told him I was too old for it. And then he looked so genuinely disappointed that I let him read one more chapter. I loved my father completely. That's the only honest way to say it. My parents' marriage ended when I was 9. Not dramatically. There was no single catastrophic event, just the slow erosion of 2 people who had grown into different shapes and could no longer occupy the same space without friction. My mother told me years later that they had tried for 2 years before deciding to separate. I believe her. They were both too careful to give up easily. The divorce was civil. They split custody 50-50. My father moved into an apartment 20 minutes away. He was present in the way I needed him to be, which was consistently, reliably, without the erratic availability of someone who has decided that fatherhood is optional. For 2 years after the divorce, my father was, in some ways, more present than he had been during the marriage. Undivided evenings, Saturday mornings that belonged entirely to me. The specific attention of a parent who is aware that his time is now measured and has decided to make it count. Then he met Sandra. I was 11 when he introduced her. She was 34, a real estate agent with 2 children from a previous marriage. Tyler, who was 9, and Chloe, who was 7. She was attractive and energetic and clearly in love with my father in the uncomplicated way of someone who has found what they were looking for. I tried to like her. I want to say that clearly because it matters. I tried. I was 11 years old and I understood, in the way 11-year-olds understand things, that my father's happiness was not something I was supposed to stand in the way of. I smiled at family dinners. I was polite to Tyler and Chloe. I told my father she seemed nice. She did seem nice, for a while. Drop a broken heart in the comments if you know exactly where this is going, because the shift, when it came, was so gradual I almost didn't notice until it was complete. My father and Sandra married when I was 13. I was a bridesmaid. I wore a blue dress I hated and smiled in every photograph and went home to my mother's house afterward and cried for an hour without being able to explain why. What I know now, with the clarity of distance, is that the wedding was not the shift. The shift had been happening for 2 years already, in increments too small to name in real time. It was the soccer game my father missed because Tyler had a school performance. It was the birthday dinner that got rescheduled because Chloe was sick. It was the way our Saturday mornings became every other Saturday, then once a month, then occasional. It was the Christmas where Sandra's family took up so much of the schedule that my father and I had 45 minutes together on December 27th, squeezed between a family brunch and a trip to her parents. None of these things were dramatic. Each one had a reasonable explanation. Families are complicated, schedules are hard, everyone is doing their best. I told myself these things because I was a child, and because telling myself these things was easier than the alternative. The alternative was that my father had a new family, and I was not the priority in it. By the time I was 15, the pattern was established. David and Sandra's household, Tyler, Chloe, the house in Beaverton, the family dinners and vacations and ordinary weekday evenings, was the center of my father's life. I was the part that existed on the perimeter, the daughter from the first marriage. Present enough to say he was involved, absent enough to not disrupt the new arrangement. Sandra was not cruel to me. I want to be precise about this. She did not mistreat me overtly, did not say unkind things directly, did not make scenes. What she did was more subtle than that. She was consistently, pleasantly indifferent to my presence in a way that communicated, without words, that I was a complication to be managed rather than a person to be embraced. My father saw this. I believe he saw it. What he chose to do with what he saw was nothing, which was its own kind of answer. I graduated high school. My father came to the ceremony. He sat with Sandra and Tyler and Chloe and took photographs and hugged me afterward and said he was proud. He looked genuinely proud. I believe that too. I went to college in Eugene. I built a life that did not require him to be central to it, which is what you do when centrality is not on offer. Over the next decade, my father and I maintained what I can only describe as a cordial distance. Holidays when schedules aligned, birthday calls, the occasional dinner when I was in Portland. We were not estranged. We were something harder to name. Present to each other in the way of people who remember what they used to be and have quietly agreed not to discuss the distance between then and now. I got married at 28. My father walked me down the aisle. It was one of the good days. He was present in the way he used to be, fully there, and I let myself have it without qualification. Then Sandra reminded him they had Tyler's graduation party the following weekend, and could we do the extended family dinner another time? And the moment passed, and we went back to what we were. Stay with me. Because what happened when Lily was born is the thing I have never fully told anyone. My daughter Lily was born on a Tuesday morning in April, 6 years ago. Marcus called my father from the hospital. He picked up on the second ring and said all the right things. Congratulations, she's beautiful. We're so happy. He said he would come as soon as they could arrange it. They came 3 weeks later. My father and Sandra, on their way to visit Sandra's sister in Seattle, a stopover in Portland. They stayed for 2 hours. Sandra held Lily for approximately 4 minutes, handed her back, and spent the remainder of the visit talking about Tyler's new job and Chloe's upcoming wedding. My father held Lily longer. He looked at her the way I remembered him looking at things he loved, quietly, with a focus that excluded everything else. For those few minutes, I saw the father I had grown up with, the one who had coached my soccer team and read me one more chapter. Then Sandra said they needed to get back on the road, and he handed Lily back to me. I watched them leave from the hospital window, and something that had been soft in me for a long time went hard. Not immediately. It was a process, not a moment. But Lily's birth had done something I hadn't expected. It had made the old wound fresh. Because now I was a parent, and I understood, with the complete understanding that only parenthood provides, that what my father had done was a choice, not a circumstance, not an inevitability, not something that had simply happened to our relationship the way weather happens. A choice made repeatedly over 20 years to prioritize Sandra's comfort over my presence in his life. I thought about what I would do if Marcus asked me to leave Lily's hospital after 2 hours because we had somewhere to be. The thought was almost incomprehensible. I called my father less after that. He called occasionally. Birthday calls, Christmas calls, the sporadic check-in that maintained the form of a relationship without its substance. I answered. I was civil. I gave him nothing that cost me anything, because I had decided, without fully articulating it to myself, that I was done subsidizing a connection that only one of us was maintaining. Marcus knew. He always knew. He was that kind of person, the kind who pays attention. He never pushed me to address it, which I appreciated. He also never let me pretend it wasn't there, which I appreciated more. "You're allowed to grieve him," he said once on a Sunday night when I had been quieter than usual after a brief holiday call with my father. "He's still alive. The grief is allowed." I cried for a long time after that. Not for my father specifically, for the father I had needed and the one I had gotten, for the gap between them. Type SAD in the comments if you understand that specific kind of grief, because it took me a long time to give myself permission to feel it. When my father called that Thursday evening in November, Sandra had been gone for 3 weeks. He told me the broad shape of it on the phone, a gradual deterioration, disagreements that had accumulated over years, a marriage that had quietly run out of whatever had sustained it. Sandra had left. Tyler and Chloe, who were adults now with their own lives, had sided with their mother in the way adult children side with the parent they were primarily raised by. My father was alone in the Beaverton house for the first time in 22 years. I listened to all of it. I asked a few questions, not to be kind, but because I genuinely wanted to understand the situation before I responded to it. When he finished, there was a pause. "I've been thinking about us," he said. "About the years. About what He stopped. Started again. "I wasn't a good father to you, Emma. Not the way I should have been. I know that." I sat down at my kitchen table. Lily had gone to her room. The dinner I'd been making was sitting forgotten on the stove. "I know you know that," I said. "I don't have a good explanation." "I'm not asking for one," I said. "I stopped asking for one a long time ago." Another pause. "I'd like to try to be better, if you'll let me." I thought about what I wanted to say. I had thought about this conversation in various forms for most of my adult life. In some versions, I said things I had been carrying since I was 15. In others, I was cold and final. In the version that actually happened, I found something I hadn't known I was going to find. Not anger, not warmth, but something precise and clear. "I need to think about it," I said. "I'm not closing the door, but I'm not opening it all the way either. Not yet." He said he understood. Can I ask you something? I said. Yes. If Sandra hadn't left, would you be calling me right now? A long silence, the longest of the conversation. I'd like to think I would have eventually, he said. That's not a yes, I said. No, he said quietly. It's not. I appreciated that, the honesty of it. After 20 years of careful evasion, my father had finally given me a true answer to a direct question. It cost him something to say it. I registered that. I'll call you next week, I said. We'll talk more then. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then I went and finished making dinner. Don't go anywhere, because what I decided over the following weeks is the part of this story I most want you to hear. I called my therapist the following morning. Her name is Dr. Chen. I had been seeing her on and off for 4 years, initially for the anxiety that comes with new parenthood and gradually for the older, deeper things that parenthood has a way of surfacing. I told her about the call. She listened in the way she always listened, completely, without interruption, without the reflexive comfort that forecloses honesty. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want?" Not what do you think you should do, not what does he deserve. What do you want? I sat with that for a long time. What I wanted was complicated. I wanted the father I had needed at 11, which was not available and never would be. I wanted an apology that could undo 20 years, which was not possible. I wanted to not care anymore, which was also not on offer. What I actually wanted, what was real and available, was something smaller and more honest. I wanted a relationship with my father that was true, not warm necessarily, not close in the way I might have wanted as a child, but real. A relationship built on what was actually there rather than what I wished were there. I think I want to try, I told Dr. Chen, but on my terms, not out of obligation, not because he's alone and needs something from me, because I'm choosing to. She said, "What are your terms?" I thought about it for a week. Then I called my father. I told him I was willing to rebuild something. I was specific about what that meant. Regular contact, genuine effort, honesty when things were difficult. I told him I was not interested in performing a closeness we hadn't earned. I told him that Lily was central to my life, and that if he wanted to be part of my life, he would need to be present for her in a way he had not been present for me. I'm not asking you to be perfect, I said. I'm asking you to show up consistently, without Sandra as a reason not to. He said he would try. I said, "Trying isn't enough anymore. I need you to do it." A pause. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." That was 8 months ago. He has called every week. He drove to Portland in December and took Lily to the zoo and held her hand the entire time and sent me a photograph afterward of the two of them in front of the elephant enclosure. Lily is in her favorite yellow coat. My father is looking at her the way he used to look at me, quietly, with a focus that excluded everything else. I keep that photograph on my phone, not as evidence of something resolved, as evidence of something possible. Type yes in the comments if you think he deserved another chance, because I went back and forth on it for a long time. People ask me sometimes whether I'm angry at Sandra. The honest answer is, not really. Not anymore. Sandra was not a villain. She was a woman who wanted her husband's full attention and found ways to arrange for it. And my father was a man who let her because the path of least resistance was easier than the harder thing. Sandra did not take my father from me. My father gave himself away. That distinction took me a long time to arrive at. It was easier, for years, to make Sandra the story, to locate the problem outside my father, in the woman he had chosen, in the circumstances of the second marriage. Easier than the alternative, that my father, the man I had loved completely, had made choices that communicated clearly and repeatedly that I was less important than his comfort. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I say it as a fact, the kind of fact that hurts less when you stop trying to explain it away. What I want to say to anyone watching this who is in the version of this I was in 10 years ago, who is maintaining a relationship with a parent who has made you peripheral, who is performing closeness because it seems like the right thing to do, is this. You are allowed to stop subsidizing it. You are allowed to pull back to the distance that is honest rather than the distance that is performed. You are allowed to grieve the parent you needed without obligating yourself to accept whatever version is on offer. And if that parent comes back, if the circumstances change and they come looking for what they set aside, you are allowed to set your own terms, not as punishment, not as revenge, but because you are a person with a life that has value, and the terms of any relationship that involves you should reflect that. My father did not earn his way back into my life by suffering the loss of Sandra. He earned it by picking up the phone every week for 8 months, by driving to Portland in December, by holding Lily's hand in front of the elephant enclosure and sending me that photograph. He earned it one small, consistent action at a time. That is the only currency that actually works. Last month, my father came to Portland for Lily's 6th birthday, not as a stopover, not on his way somewhere else. He drove 3 hours specifically for her birthday, arrived the evening before, stayed 2 nights in the guest room that used to be my home office, and was present for every moment of a 6-year-old's birthday party in a way that I recognized, in the way I recognized him in the parking lot on Sunday mornings learning to drive, in the way I recognized him reading one more chapter. After Lily was in bed, my father and I sat on the back porch with wine. It was a clear night, the kind Portland gets in September when it remembers it can be beautiful. "She's extraordinary," he said. "She is," I said. "She looks like you did at that age." I didn't say anything. He hadn't seen me much at that age, but I understood what he was trying to say, and I let it be what it was. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said. Not for the first time. He had said it before, in various forms. But this time it landed differently. Maybe because Lily was asleep upstairs. Maybe because he had just spent 2 days being the father he should have been 25 years ago. Maybe because I was finally ready to let it land. "I know," I said. "Is that enough?" I thought about it. The honest answer. The true one. "It's a start," I said. "Keep going." He nodded. We sat there for a while longer. The night was quiet. Somewhere down the street, a dog was barking at something it couldn't identify. My father is not the father I needed at 11. He is the father who is here now, imperfectly and honestly, doing the work that should have been done a long time ago. It is not everything, but it is real. And real, I have learned, is what you build on. If this story found you somewhere you needed it, if you're carrying a version of this, or deciding what to do with a door that's been opened after a long time closed, leave me a comment. Tell me where you are. Subscribe for new stories every week. See you next time. All stories on this channel are fictional narratives created for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, companies, or events is coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of family healing, parental accountability, and the courage to set your own terms.